Hi, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of Gravy's Behind the Checkout webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about ROI payment orchestration. My name is Zubin. I lead our commercial team here at Gravy. Prior to Gravy, spent 7 years working on Google's consumer products organization, worked at an intersection of payments, fintech, big tech, banking. Prior to that, over the last 2 decades at Visa and HSBC. Joining me on this call as a fellow panelist is our very own Olga, our Chief Financial Officer. Olga, why don't I turn this over to you to introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me, Zubin. I'm very excited to be here leading this webinar with you today. Olga Tish here, Gravy CFO, 20 years of experience in finance, most of those years within the payments industry, including working for companies like PayPal and Braintree. And as I like to put it, within the finance function, all we do is maximize that ROI for our shareholders.
Amazing, Olga. I'm really excited to have you with us today. Before we dive in, I thought it'd be worthwhile for the attendees for us to take a sort of a step back and look at some of the macroeconomic trends that are driving the adoption of payment orchestration. I was reading a report in November published by the US Department of Commerce that stated that in the US, digital commerce was projected to attribute about 1.1 trillion in revenue just in 2023. That's about a 10-12% increase over 2022. And when we kind of take a bigger look at the economy, or the global economy, the global digital economy, I think that number is closer to sort of 5.2, 5.3 trillion, attributed to grow close to about 8 trillion by the end of 2027. Massive, massive numbers, massive growth. And all this puts a ton of pressures on businesses that are looking to sort of make sure that they're able to keep up with the consumer demand for payments. So with that background, or with that sort of context in mind, Olga, I'd love to turn this back to you to sort of talk about what are some of the key benefits of orchestration in the context of consumers or merchants.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
in my opinion, there are four main areas where a business adopting payment orchestration will see benefits. They ultimately contribute towards the same thing, which is the business profitability, the business bottom line. So the first one is around reducing technical debt as you get access to payment services and all those anti-fraud services via one single API integration. The second one is around growth and driving growth and uplift in conversion by customizing payment options in real time at checkout. Then another one would be around optimizing auth rates and reducing costs with dynamic retries and network tokenization, which goes hand in hand with anti-fraud management and least cost routing, which you and I, Zumi, will cover in more detail as we go through this webinar. And in Gravy's case, I like to mention future-proofing your payments infrastructure. And the reason I mention this is because we are infrastructure as a service. So the way we do this is by having a dedicated cloud instance to support your redundancy and your performance requirements. So most importantly, if I put this into perspective, the true benefit of an orchestrator, again, especially in the case of infrastructure as a service, is that these four main areas, when you add them up, they are actually greater than the sum of their parts.
You touched on something really important, Olga, and I think that may be worthwhile us just pausing and sort of double clicking into that, which is really infrastructure as a service. If we look at sort of over the last decade, cloud native infrastructures have been sort of very relevant, but it has been relevant in the context of what's popularly called in the industry software as a service platforms. We and Gravy have taken a rather unique approach to this, talking about infrastructure as a service. And I thought it may be useful for us to kind of double click into that. What is so unique about infrastructure as a service? What are the benefits of infrastructure as a service? And obviously, how does that all relate to ROI?
Yeah, so it's really interesting when you start unpacking and comparing infrastructure as a service to software as a service, and even to building in-house. And the benefits here are that infrastructure as a service allows you for greater customization and a more tailored solution to your business needs. And with infrastructure as a service, as you know this, resources can be easily scaled up or down based on demand, allowing for a more efficient use of your resources. And then don't forget that when it comes to infrastructure as a service, typically it follows a pay-as-you-go model, right? So businesses only pay for the resources they use, making it way more cost-effective. And when it comes to infrastructure as a service, you can easily integrate with your existing infrastructure. That's something you don't see so much with software as a service or when building in-house. So what that enables you is a much smoother transition with all the services that you might already be using. And the final one is control, which is a key one. You as a user, you will have more control over the underlying infrastructure, including security configurations, network settings, and deployment options.
I love that. And if I put my commercial hat on, I think one of the other big advantages that we're seeing is the data residency and the data localization sort of benefits of infrastructure as a service. So take, for example, one of our largest customers, the Woolworths Group, largest retailer, largest grocer in Australia. Their instances of Gravy are deployed in GCP or Google Cloud data centers in market, on soil in Australia. Again, from a latency, residency perspective, they are in market, serving the consumers in the market. Also, because the data never leaves the market, they're able to sort of meet any data localization or any promises they have to their consumers about ensuring their data is on soil. Similarly, we have customers in Europe and US where their instances of Gravy are deployed in data centers on soil. So not only like for our European customers that they meet GDPR, there is no commingling of data between those two instances. So in terms of sort of driving towards an issue in one instance has no impact to instances or the other instances of our customers, essentially reducing that risk of being a point of failure in the system. So again, really exciting, a rather unique approach. Obviously helps us from a commercial perspective as well in terms of showing that ROI, getting our customers comfortable with our approach. I think this is a good segue, Olga, to sort of talk a little about what are those levers or those impact categories that our clients are able to glean out of the benefit of using Gravy and specifically payments orchestration. And I wonder if we kind of just maybe deep dive into what are those impact categories, what are those levels available to our clients?
Absolutely. And I think you can group them in four main categories or four main areas for any business adopting payment orchestration. So again, they all ultimately contribute towards your business profitability, towards your bottom line. So the first one would be around growth. So here we're talking about multiple providers and payment types through one single API integration. And that goes from new acquirers in existing markets to alternative payment methods that will perhaps allow you to target a new demographic, now willing to spend more just because of the availability of that additional alternative payment method, or even target markets where you weren't able to play before because you didn't have the required payment options. India, as an example, as a market with low share of checkout for credit cards. So in plain English, I think what I'm saying here is that orchestration gives you speed to market. Here, we're talking about revenue that your business would be sacrificing if it had to build those connections from scratch. We would be talking about number of weeks, right, before that revenue could come in. But instead, you will be leveraging an orchestrator that already built those connectors and is also taking the burden of maintaining those connectors regularly, given the economies of scale that an orchestrator experiences. The second area I would like to cover here is transaction optimization. And here what we're talking about is a stronger end user experience for your customer. And that happens because you are then reducing the number of declined or failed payments. And that takes the shape of uptime increase, for example, where you now have the availability to route payments between multiple processes. Think along the lines of redundancy that prevents interruptions caused by outages, as an example. And then we are also talking about transaction optimization via elements such as network tokens and account of data and the uplift you will see in auth rates linked to that. Also think about routing, how now you are able to control 3DS, retries, and even control dynamic retries and the increase of the authorized transactions linked to that. So when it comes to smart routing, for example, and beyond maximizing the auth rates, we can also talk about cost optimization, which takes me to the next big category or area I would like to cover, where your business benefits from cost reduction when it starts working with an orchestrator. And here we're talking about fee optimization, and that goes from debit card routing, open banking, new acquirers, all the way to network tokenized transactions. Where, as an example, you and I know this, in North America, we have seen 10 basis points cost saving per tokenized transaction as per Visa announcement, right? And we expect that to follow in terms of other markets and even MasterCard. So pausing here, because within cost reduction, the next big one when working with an orchestrator is the elimination of in-house costs for additional integrations and that maintenance for those connectors. And here, I'm not necessarily talking about headcount reduction. I'm actually talking about relocation of resources. So if before within your payments team, you had a number of people working on those integrations and maintaining them regularly, now those people can be allocated towards more value add activities within the business, because you have an orchestrator that already has those connectors available and is also absorbing the burden of maintaining them regularly because of the economies of scale that orchestrators generate when it comes to this piece of the puzzle. And then last area where I think payment orchestration is empowering your business is via fraud reduction. And this probably deserves a separate session on its own. But basically what I'm talking about here is reduction of chargebacks and decrease of false declines. So to summarize, basically what I'm saying is when it comes to growth, transaction optimization, cost reduction, and fraud reduction, again, the true benefit of an orchestrator is that it is more than the sum of its parts.
I love that, Olga, because a lot of times when we do talk about orchestration, the natural tendency is to sort of focus really on the OpEx side of ROI, like what's the headcount reduction. But I think you've correctly stated that the benefits sort of are multifaceted and the impact levers available to our clients sort of extend across a variety of various different impact categories. It's interesting because I think one of the other things that is relevant in our conversations with our customers is not all of these impact categories are relevant to them. I recently read a post that really looked at ROI, but rather than talking about it as ROI, talking about it as ROY. And I think that's sort of relevant when we talk to our customers. And I know you and I spend a lot of time on this, which is what is relevant? What is the return of investment for that specific user in that user, meaning our customers, for that business? What's relevant to them that allows them to have the greatest impact to their business? And to maybe potentially do that, I thought maybe useful for us to potentially take two examples. I think the first one being sort of personalized checkout, of like, how do our customers look at personalized checkout as an impact lever, or use impact levers to sort of influence personalized checkout. And then maybe the other one could be least cost routing. So would love your thoughts using these as examples to kind of illustrate the ROI of business orchestration.
Absolutely. So this is what we see, you and I see day in and day out. Whenever we talk to a business, we try to understand what their needs are, because payment orchestration, yes, can tackle many pain points, but depending on where you're based and what the nature of your business is, we will see different benefits. Not all will be applicable to you. There will be some that are more important than others. And if we can start unpacking, for example, personalized checkout, one of them that we see for some and not so much for others. Least cost routing, one where it's not so much, or tends to be not so much about fee minimization, but more around fee optimization. So as we look at a company that is looking into payment orchestration and starts thinking about partnering with a company like Gravy, we look at that as an investment, and as you said it, like we start unpacking what that return on investment looks like based on their needs, based on the why they are looking for orchestration.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And you touched on two very important points that may be worth sort of reiterating. One is, when we talk about least cost routing, it's not about the least cost aspect of it. It's really about how do you find that optimal balance between cost and authorization, and of course fraud. And it's almost that three-legged stool, so to speak, when we talk about in the industry of how do you find that balance. And I think what we're excited about in at Gravy and specifically within the payment orchestration space is how you could automate a lot of those capabilities to manage and optimize that stack. So again, for many of our customers and clients, those are very relevant conversations, and we're able to dive in and really lean in on those impact categories. Olga, if I can pull this back and kind of attempt to summarize our conversation so far, we've talked about a lot of OpEx sort of benefits. We've talked a lot about sort of growth levers. We've talked about cost optimization, fraud minimization levers. I think one of the most understated benefits of payments orchestration is not just the the one-time deployment aspects of OpEx, and you briefly touched on it, but I think it's worth sort of reiterating and highlighting, is that ongoing maintenance. I kind of go back to that macroeconomic trend that we kicked off this discussion with, which is this massive growth. And if you look at businesses, what they're challenged by is not the fact that they've deployed these, but how do you continue to sort of manage, maintain, and grow based on the growing needs of the customer. And I think that in itself, probably has a massive impact lever. And a lot of customers are looking at this today and saying, hey, how do we make sure that as the economy and as the businesses continue to evolve, how do we keep up with that?
Future-proofing.
Future-proofing, absolutely. Olga, I think we've got a couple of questions in. Let me go into the attendees list and see, can we get some questions in before we wrap up out here. Give me a second. Let me just pull up these questions. Here we go. All right. First question is, does Gravy have an ROI spreadsheet that you can share?
Oh, all right. So it sounds like that person hasn't seen our website yet.
Probably not. Yes.
If you check our website, we have developed an ROI or ROI calculator. Very easy, very straightforward to use. You'll be able to input the necessary information about your business. It's been designed in a way any CFO, any CEO, any head of payments can just input and then calculate. It will give you a provisional figure, which we always recommend to double check with one of our payment consultants, because it's always good to just sanity check whatever you get there. But yes, check our website. There is one.
Amazing. I have a comment that states that we were fantastic, so fantastic job. Thank you. One additional question, Olga, which is, can Gravy share uplift estimates that I can plug into these calculations? Olga, I'll turn this to you. We
Yes.
spend a lot of time on this every day.
So yes, it's part of what I mentioned. That ROI calculator has been built and is available through our website. We always recommend for you to check with one of our payment consultants, because then we will be able to sanity check whatever your input has been against industry averages and benchmark, and then arrive to a more accurate figure.
No, that's so true, Olga. Maybe I can add some little color out here. We spend a lot of time every day with our customers and clients on this. Ultimately, there are so many levers, and yes, we do have some benchmark levers that we could sort of plug into a calculation, but those are benchmarks and averages. A lot of these are very relevant to your business. Going back to the ROI, what's relevant to you? What are those impact levers that are probably more important to that particular business in that particular scenario? And so if you do have sort of requirements or there's an interest to dive into that ROI, obviously, as Olga mentioned, go into the website, plug in numbers that you have. You can see those numbers on your own. But if there's a desire to dive into the details, please do reach out. We will obviously want to work with you to understand what are those correct numbers and ranges that could potentially impact. And again, I think one of the other interesting things is by actually having something out here, you can actually play around with a bunch of numbers to say what are those impact levers that'll have the maximum ROI for the investments.
Absolutely.
Let me just check if I think with that, let's wrap this up. Olga, just firstly, thank you for joining. This has been really useful. I know you and I spend a lot of time on a daily basis on this topic. I think the opportunity to come together and talk about it and share it with the attendees, and I believe we'll have a recording that will be out as well for others who weren't able to join. But again, thank you so much for your time. Olga, any last words from your perspective?
It's been fun. Thank you so much for having me.